While focusing on the outside world creates only an illusion, turning inward brings true awakening. Because everything we look for outside actually finds an echo within us. What we have, what others think of us, the definitions of success imposed by society, all of these come and go like temporary shadows. But looking inwards, facing our essence, seeing our fears, desires, and our true self liberates us. The person who discovers her inner world doesn't drift in the chaos of the outer world. He doesn't tie his inner peace to external conditions. Someone who knows who he is, what he wants, and what he really values does not live life like a dream. He wakes up and starts to really live. So the question is, are you looking outwards or inwards? If you are only looking outwards, you are doomed to see yourself through the eyes of others. You become dependent on their approval, their expectations, their applause. But deep down inside, there is a part of you that really knows who you are, a side that silently watches you, a side that carries the essence that makes you who you are. When you turn inwards, then you realize you are more than the roles that the outside world assigns to you. You are more than success labels, social masks, imposed fears. When inner awareness begins, you are no longer just a spectator, but the real actor of your life. But this journey is not easy. Do you have the courage to face your own shadows, the emotions you suppress, the fears you ignore, the desires you deny? They're all hiding in the depths of your subconscious. Facing them will shake you, but it will also rebuild you. True freedom lies not in controlling the outside world, but in understanding your inner world. As you change, your world changes. As your perspective changes, your life transforms. As Jung said, being you is the greatest privilege in the world. Life before finding yourself, society's programming. Before we discover our own identity, we live with the molds that society imposes on us, often without even realizing it. When we were born, we had no ideas, no judgments, but over time, our family, school, and the society we live in started to mold us. We learned that we would be applauded for what we did and ostracized for what we did. We realized that we had to conform to certain patterns in order to be loved and accepted. We were told to be quiet, not to interrupt when adults were talking. Failure was not accepted. We were taught not to make mistakes. We were asked to suppress our emotions, to appear strong. The sentence, "What will others say?" settled in our lives like a shadow, and over time, we learned to live according to the expectations of the outside world instead of our own wishes. Family, school, and society were the three elements that had the strongest influence on us. Although our parents wanted to raise us in the best way, they often reflected their own fears and expectations on us. We abandoned our own dreams in order to live their dreams. We distanced ourselves from our true selves in order to be loved and accepted. School taught us to adapt, not to learn. While our creativity was blunted, we were expected to fit seamlessly into the system. We were forced to memorize instead of thinking critically, and we were taught that there was only one right answer to the questions posed to us. Society kept whispering how we should be. Advertisements, social media, norms, all of them came together and told us in which body, in which outfit, with which success we should exist. We were told that being beautiful, successful, rich, and popular was the key to being loved and valued. But no one said it was enough to be yourself. Instead of our true selves, we adopted an identity approved by others. After a point, we became unable to distinguish whether we were living with our own desires or following what we were taught. We started to constantly wait for approval. Instead of trusting ourselves, we acted according to what others thought. We suppressed our own emotions because it was perceived as a bad thing to feel sad, afraid, or fragile. But every suppressed emotion continued to grow inside us. We forgot the things we loved and were passionate about as children. We put our dreams and true desires aside and started to live a life shaped by society, confronting the shadow self. According to Carl Jung, man does not exist only with his conscious thoughts and the face he presents to the outside world. Outside our consciousness, there is another side of us that we do not want to accept, that we suppress, that we avoid seeing. Jung calls this dark side shadow. The shadow represents the aspects of our personality that are rejected and pushed into the unconscious. Anger, jealousy, fear, selfishness, ambition, even repressed desires. Every emotion and thought that is not tolerated by society accumulates in our shadow side. But unconsciously suppressing them does not mean that they disappear. On the contrary, the more we suppress them, the more uncontrollable they become. The shadow often manifests itself unconsciously. Sometimes we cannot control our anger. Sometimes we judge others. Sometimes we repeat the same mistakes when we don't mean to. What bothers us in the outside world is often a reflection of the shadow parts of ourselves that we avoid confronting. Many of the things we criticize in others are actually traits we cannot accept in ourselves. If we feel excessive anger, jealousy, or contempt towards someone, it is necessary to get to the root of these feelings, because if we don't face our shadow, it will continue to rule us without us realizing it. Accepting the shadow self is not an easy process, because we all want to see ourselves as good and right. Facing our own dark sides starts with accepting them. When you are angry, instead of rejecting it, you should try to understand why you are angry. When feeling jealous, it is important to recognize the underlying sense of inadequacy. It liberates us to realize that we are human, that we are not perfect, and that every emotion has a reason. Repressed emotions affect our lives as long as they remain hidden in our subconscious. Our childhood traumas, repressed fears, past events that we try to forget actually shape our inner world. If a child learned to hide his/her feelings at a young age in order not to be judged, he/she will have difficulty expressing himself/herself as an adult. A person who learned at a young age that he/she has to be successful in order to be loved becomes dependent on constant external approval in later years. If traumas pushed into the subconscious remain unresolved, they manifest themselves in different ways in later years. Returning to our inner world and realizing the emotions and traumas we have repressed in our past is the first step to resolving them. Jung says that the journey of individuation cannot be completed without facing one's shadow. True freedom is possible by accepting one's own darkness and consciously transforming it. Do you dare to face your own shadow? Persona, mask or reality? When a person is born, he is only himself. Over time, in order to exist in society, he takes on certain roles and molds himself according to the expectations of others. Carl Jung calls these identities we display in society as persona. Persona means mask in Latin and is the face of the individual presented to the outside world and accepted by the society. A good son, a successful employee, a loyal friend, a responsible parent. We wear different masks to adapt to the environment we live in and to be accepted. However, over time, these masks overshadow our true identity. After a while, we become so integrated with the roles we play that we become unable to realize whether we are acting according to our own wishes or whether we are playing the person society expects us to be. Persona is an inevitable part of social life. There is a need for order in human relations, and within this order, everyone plays certain roles. But the problem starts when we identify with the persona. If we become only the person society wants to see, a repressed unrest arises within us. We may feel fragile and inadequate inside, while trying to appear strong and successful to others. No matter how happy we may appear to people, we may feel empty inside when we are alone. Persona is functional in social life, but it is dangerous when it becomes an armor hiding our true self. According to Jung, the biggest mistake of the individual is that he thinks the persona is himself. When we wear our masks for a long time, we can forget who we are. We create an identity that is appreciated in our environment, but this identity may not really satisfy us. It becomes important how successful we are in the eyes of others, how ideal we are. We suppress our true feelings because the self underneath the mask may not be approved by society. But everything that is suppressed makes itself felt in some way in the subconscious. No matter how strong a person may appear in the outside world, if he or she is disconnected from his or her inner voice, he or she will at some point feel lost. Recognizing and letting go of one's own masks is one of the most important steps in the process of individuation. Firstly, we need to realize which masks we wear. In which environments do we change ourselves? Who do we pretend to be different around? When do we hide our true feelings? Answering these questions honestly increases our self-awareness. Stripping off our masks does not always mean showing the world our most vulnerable selves. However, it is necessary to at least recognize who we are within ourselves and learn not to hide behind false identities. Connecting with the true self requires accepting ourselves as we are and living in peace with our inner world. Persona is a tool that allows us to exist in society, but we need to use it without forgetting our true self. It is easy to live with masks, but true peace is possible by accepting the identity behind the masks. How does the journey of self-discovery begin? The journey of finding oneself begins with silencing the sounds from the outside world and turning inward. Throughout life, people try to adapt to the expectations of their environment. Family, society, work life, and social environment constantly whisper who we should be. But at some point, we begin to question what our true self is beyond these roles. Who am I? What do I want? Do I really live my life by my own choices? Or am I repeating what I have been taught? These questions are the first steps of inner questioning and awareness. Inner awareness requires questioning the life we live on autopilot. Do the decisions we make during the day really come from within, or are they the result of our habits and social conditioning? In which situations do we feel comfortable? In which environments do we wear a mask? How authentic are we when communicating with people? How much do we adapt to social norms? The process of self-knowledge begins with honest answers to these questions. Different methods can be used to gain awareness on this journey. Meditation is one of the most effective ways to quiet the mind and learn to hear the inner voice. Keeping a diary is a powerful way of understanding the inner world and seeing thoughts more clearly. Therapy offers an in-depth tool to explore unconscious patterns and confront our shadow. Nature walks, spending time alone, and mindfulness exercises can help to find inner silence by taking the mind away from the chaos of the outside world. One of Carl Jung's most important principles is to be honest with oneself. As long as a person deceives himself, no real transformation is possible. Someone who denies it even though he is unhappy in life, who distracts himself even though he knows he is on a wrong path, has lost his inner awareness. According to Jung, someone who wants to enter the process of individuation must first develop a radical honesty towards himself. Being able to see oneself without denying one's feelings, without suppressing one's fears, without hiding one's true desires, is the basis of this process. Finding oneself does not mean abandoning one's existing identity and becoming someone else. On the contrary, it is to return to your most natural self by cleaning the false selves that have clung to you over the years. This journey can sometimes be painful because it takes courage to face all the truths we hide inside us. But in the end, the destination will be a genuine and free existence, free from the expectations of the outside world. How does real life change when you find yourself? To find yourself is to start looking at life in a completely different way. If you have lived with the expectations of others for a long time, discovering who you really are is a revolutionary change. Living an authentic life means no longer depending on the approval of the outside world, but trusting your inner voice and acting on your own values. Someone who discovers their true self is no longer a spectator in life, but an active player. You realize that you are in a game that was previously played according to the rules of others. The definitions of success drawn by society, the applause from outside, the desire to be liked are no longer as effective as before. Instead, you turn to things that provide inner satisfaction. You can find peace even in the smallest moments, and feel more integrated in everything you do, because you no longer focus on external approval, but on your own inner balance. Finding meaning and direction in life develops naturally when you get to know yourself. You start to question the goals you were unconsciously pursuing before. Is it something you really want? Or is it an obligation imposed on you by society? You realize whether the definition of a good life that has been ingrained in you since childhood really fits you. If a goal doesn't excite you, you try to create your own meaning instead of chasing it. You now have an inner compass and don't need others to tell you what life means to you. When you gain authenticity, peace, and true self-confidence, you no longer need masks. Self-confidence is not a challenge to the outside world, but a feeling of inner comfort. You no longer doubt who you are, because what matters to you is not how others see you, but how you feel about yourself. You can stand more firmly against the ups and downs of life, because you are no longer basing your worth on external circumstances. Success or failure, being liked or criticized, while these things come and go, you remain in your own center. Before you find yourself, you move like a leaf drifting in a river. Wherever the water takes you, you go. But when you discover yourself, you become a boat that can choose its own direction. The winds and currents still exist, but now you know that you are in control. As Carl Jung said, no one brings light from outside. You have to find the light within yourself. When you find yourself, your life changes because you start to walk with the light inside you. So, are you still waiting for the light from outside? Or are you ready to light your own light? If you liked this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel for similar content. Your support is very valuable to me. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Stay happy.